Welcome to Thursday Thoughts, your weekly dose of real, honest conversation on all things personal growth. These are the chats Lucy and I love having every week over on Instagram. They're unfiltered, unedited, and always rooted in practical tools and a dose of inspiration. Let's dive in.
This morning, we are talking about, I get really excited about this topic, which might sound a bit silly because it's a very, very simple topic, but actually I think it is so incredibly key to living our best possible lives. And I know this because basically we're talking about dwelling on things or not dwelling on things. So essentially we're talking about where we're placing our focus, because when I look back to my life, I used to spend so much time dwelling on things that were not serving me. I used to dwell on things that made me feel bad. I used to dwell on things that were really negative, things that made me feel anxious. I was dwelling on all the wrong things. I was placing my attention on all the wrong things. And the truth is that when you do that, you just create more shit in your life. But I think the reason I wanted to talk about this, and the reason I think it's important to think about, is because so many of us are just going through life on like autopilot, and we're not actually bringing awareness to what we are focusing on. So our mind goes wherever it goes. We're not aware. So we could be dwelling on something really bad that's making us feel really bad for 3 hours. We can just keep thinking about, obsessing about, ruminating on this thing without even realizing that we're doing it. And all that does is just lowers your vibe. It makes you feel bad, and it just creates more crap, because as we know, we are energetic beings. Science tells us that we are more than 99% energy. I know I always go on about this, we always go on about this, but it's true. And what the energy that we're putting out, the vibrational frequency that we are putting out into the universal field, it really matters, because we are going to attract more of what we're putting out. So if we spend most of our lives feeling pissed off and focusing on the things that aren't going right, focusing on the things that make us feel bad, focusing on the things that are going wrong, what we're doing is we're putting a bad vibe out into the universe, and we are attracting more things, people, circumstances on that same vibrational frequency. So what we want to do is just make sure that we're checking in with our mind as many times as we can throughout the day. And let me just add, look, I'm far from freaking perfect at this. I can find myself dwelling on shit that isn't serving me all the time. But I think where I've changed is that I'm so much more aware of my thoughts, going through the day, that I'm much better able to shift my focus onto something more positive. So yeah, I think this is a really, really key, very, very simple thing, but really bloody important. Someone's just left a message. People dwell on the past instead of learning and moving forward, and that's just wasted energy. I could not agree more. So thanks, Gregory. It's so true. So if you find yourself thinking more about the past than the future, you've got to look at that, because we want to be looking towards where we're going rather than where we've been. And actually, it's an interesting, I'm glad Gregory made this point, because I think it's really interesting to notice the people who are constantly harping back to the past and talking about things that happened and, back in the good old days when I was at school or I was at university or whatever. Why are we wasting time? And of course, it's nice to reminisce occasionally, but we mainly want to be focusing on where we're going, because really the past doesn't exist. All we've got is right now and where we're going. So yeah.
Yes, it's so important, where we're placing our attention is where all our energy goes, and we want to be placing it on the things which are going to serve us well. I mean, in terms of, sometimes it's lovely to look at the past things and reminisce. It does kind of make you feel all warm and fuzzy, and it is a really lovely thing to do. But, and I know that with my mum, who has Alzheimer's, and actually one of the things that we are able to do is to really focus on those past feelings. And as long as it's bringing up really lovely, positive feelings in your body, then that's a really positive thing.
And
But
there's a
I think,
difference between thinking about the past and having a nice
yes,
reminisce with a friend, or
yes.
living in the past. I think there's a different
Absolutely. I
idea
think
of that.
that's it. We don't want to be living and ruminating and dwelling on stuff which has happened, which is making us feel like shit. So it's like the feeling associated with it. Having said that, a little caveat to that is being able to if there is something that comes up, notice the feelings that it brings. We don't want to, this isn't about squashing down negative feelings. This is about catching ourselves when we are dwelling on something. Yes, we need to feel a feeling and accept it and, feel that, but then move on. And I think
Exactly.
this is the real issue that so
Yeah.
many of us get stuck in. And you find yourself just thinking the same thought again and again and again and again, and it doesn't do any good. So what we've got to try and do is catch those spiraling thoughts and change the record, because it's not doing
Exactly.
anybody any good. And the way we do that, as you said, is through really awareness of what we're thinking. And how we do that is through regular practice of catching ourselves. And
Yeah.
honestly, I think for me, this has been, of all the things I have learned in all my life, and it has been the biggest, most single thing which has brought a huge amount of change to the way I see the world, is having that ability to be able to just notice where is my attention? Literally that, because the moment you can start to see that you are just going over and over again on the same old things, or that you are just literally in autopilot mode and you have no attention of what you're doing, you're just sleepwalking through life, which I honestly did for majority of my life until about 10
Same.
years ago. I literally was sleepwalking. That when you actually finally get some awareness, it's completely game changing in every single way, because
Yeah.
you can start to choose the direction you want to go, and you can start to choose how you respond to something. You can start to choose how you think about something, and how you then think is obviously going to influence the way that you feel, and then how you feel is going to then influence the actions that you take or do not take. And that then obviously is going to influence the way that the rest of the, things roll out in your life. So it is really, really key. And as you said, it's not rocket science. It's not difficult. It is all it is an awareness and a practice of becoming aware of what you're thinking. And I think when for me, I think I'm just trying to think when I first started doing this. And for me, it really was when I joined that course, when we first met with Kathy Heller. We did the course together, and everything that she was saying just made so much sense. And it was literally then, it was like, and she said, right, or someone said, literally put on regular alarms on your phone to just go off at kind of intervals throughout the day, and every time it goes off, just notice what are you thinking about and catch it. And for me, that was it. I was like, oh my God, my thoughts are just really not being very helpful at all. So it was just, oh, okay, I can actually reach for a slightly better thought. And this isn't saying, okay, ignore thoughts, and then suddenly just try and reach for something which is like, so like, oh my God, life is brilliant, it's all unicorns and rainbows. It's not that. It's just kind of reaching for a slightly different perspective on that thing, so it can be slightly better thought, just to shift it. It's like, an airplane is programmed to go in one direction. If you literally shift it by 1 degree, it has a different destination. And that's all we're asking to do is just to slightly shift your thought to a slightly more helpful trajectory, because it will really shift everything in your life.
100%. Ultimately, everything that you and I talk about in these conversations it basically boils down to becoming more conscious. We are talking here about becoming more conscious. Because I was never conscious. I was never living as a conscious being. Of course I was conscious. It'd be a bit worrying if I'd always been unconscious, but you know what I mean? Like I never lived as a conscious human. I was like, you use the expression sleepwalking through my life. And that is exactly what I did for frickin' decades. It really, truly is about becoming more conscious of the things that are going on in your mind. And what you said about the alarms, I talk about this all the time. And for years, I've had reminders in my phone. I literally have, I'm not exaggerating when I say every 45 minutes to an hour throughout the day, from about 6 o'clock in the morning until about 9 o'clock at night, I have various things that go off on my phone. So, because if I didn't, I would forget, because we all have a tendency to go back into that sort of unconscious state where we're not aware of our thoughts. We're not kind of in the moment, and we're worrying about something or whatever it is. But the alarms on your phone, I cannot tell you how many times I've talked about this on my podcast, in my membership. I always say to people, put alarms in your phone. And that can just say, that it can literally say, what are you thinking? You could literally program your phone so that every hour or 2 hours, your phone pops up with a reminder so that when you look down at your phone, it says, what are you thinking? How are you feeling? Where are your thoughts? What are you focusing on? It really is as simple as that. But that doesn't mean it's easy. And I think that people are very quick to take and, listen to a conversation like this and go, oh, I'm going to fucking reminders in my phone. That's ridiculous. Well, if you want to feel better about your life, I would say that this is an absolute no-brainer. It is free. It is easy. And it's going to keep you aware. And that is how we create a better life, because when we become more aware of where our mind is at any given time, when we get better at shifting our focus onto things that feel good, then we are going to feel better more of the time. And when we start to feel better more of the time, our life is going to subsequently gets better. It is just how it works. And going back to what you said, Polly, about, it's not about denying feelings. It's not at all. When something annoying happens to me, I get fucking annoyed like anybody else. And I'll be like, ugh. But the difference is that you can stay there, or you can move on. And obviously it's all relative. Some things are much more serious and bigger than other things. But on a day-to-day basis, the little things that are happening all the time, the little annoyances, the little things that piss us off, the kind of, oh God, am I worrying because my boss sent me an email saying he wants to meet with me tomorrow? It's those kinds of things. Like, of course, you can and you should feel the feelings in the moment and allow yourself to, okay, fine, if you have to feel worried for half an hour, fine, do that. But the point is, how long are you dwelling on these things? How long are you sitting in those feelings? How long are you allowing yourself to worry about the email, or feel annoyed about the guy that stole your parking space, or how long are you going to ruminate on that conversation that you had with your friend that really pissed you off? Or how long, for you or I, it might be, how long are we going to dwell on a shitty comment on Instagram? Like, I've had people saying nasty things, like, when I did my piece in the Telegraph, like, how long am I going to allow myself to focus on people being nasty and saying mean things about me? Like, that is my choice. And I can feel annoyed and I can feel upset in the moment, and I can allow myself to feel whatever I need to feel for a certain amount of time. But if I'm still obsessing about what that freaking troll said to me on Instagram a week later, then that is my bad, because it's my responsibility to shift my focus off of that and onto something that feels better,
Yeah. I will only ever recommend brands that I know, love, and use myself. And one of those is Ancient and Brave. Honestly, they've become part of my daily habits. The very first thing I do every morning is pour myself a big glass of water with their true hydration in it. It feels like such a simple ritual, but it really sets me up for the day. And I know I'm properly rehydrating with their blend of electrolytes and minerals, especially before I exercise, which I always do in the morning. Then later on, when I make my coffee, I stir in their true collagen powder into the coffee. Now, it blends in straight away, no fuss, there's no taste, and collagen is something we naturally lose as we age, but it's so important for our skin, joints, and overall vitality. Now, I'll be honest, Ancient and Brave may cost a little more than some of the tubs you'll spot on supermarket shelves, but the difference is you're getting the highest quality ingredients, sourced with integrity and tested to a higher standard, and absolutely no nasties added. That's why I trust them and why I think they're worth every penny. And because I want you to be able to try them out for yourself, I've got a special offer for you. As a listener of this podcast, you can get 20% off your very first order. All you need to do is click the link in the show notes and pop in the code POLYW20 at checkout. They've got more than just collagen and hydration too. They've got creatine, they've got blends, supplements. So it's a perfect chance to explore their range and make the most of that 20% off.
I think also a lot of this has got to do with our on how the state of our nervous system. Excuse me. So if your nervous system is in a very high state of stress at all times, yes, it is very difficult because you're in a state of hypervigilance. And when you're in a state of hypervigilance, yeah, you are constantly looking out for the negative because that is how we are wired. So you're going to you're going to get really focused in on those negative moments and state. So what happens then, it's very difficult to return back to a nice, calm state where actually we're in our parasympathetic and where we're able to see the bigger picture, where we're able to get a sense of calm. So what we want is a flexibility. Yes, we are going to go into those states of hypervigilance, and yes, we are going to get stressed, and we are going to see the bad. But what we want very quickly is to be able to have that flexibility to be able to return back into our what we call as our window of tolerance. So alongside of checking where your thoughts are, it really is super, super important to really focus on, are you giving yourself an opportunity day to day to build that flexibility in your nervous system? Are you building in time to bring your nervous system down to a state of calm so that you are training it constantly to that stress state and then back down again? Because it literally is physically very difficult if you are constantly stressed to actually start to bring yourself back down to a place where you're able to see the bigger picture, you're able to switch your perspective. It's just not possible, because if you think, all those years ago, if when you're in a dangerous situation, you're not thinking about all the different options that are possible to you. So yes, that's where meditation, breath work, just exercises are sometimes quite a good way of kind of breaking that cycle, or anything to do with nervous system regulation and calming your vagus and working on your vagus nerve, and all of that is going to really help you be able to start seeing, literally, you can zone out and see that bigger picture, and see actually, gosh, things aren't so bad. I can actually look at this in a slightly different way and see that I don't have to get stuck here. That's ultimately what we're doing, is we get so stuck on something. And that feeling of stuckness is just the worst feeling. And it's just about breaking that cycle. That's what we want to do, is break that cycle of same ruminating thoughts. And that's why I absolutely love breathing and using our breath, because this month inside My Inner Space, we're sort of cycling between 3 different ways of using our breath to shift our state. So we can use our breath to really calm. We can also use our breath to really energize. And then we can also use our breath to focus, just depending on which sort of breath pattern you use. And so we have this incredible inner ability inside of ourselves to be able to shift what we're focusing on, to shift how we're feeling. And honestly, people just need to know this. It's just so frustrating that
Yeah,
we don't talk this stuff at school,
I know.
because we've got it all within us, and
Yeah,
yet we just don't know how to use it.
yeah,
So, and again, it's easy, it's free. Once you know how, you can do it and use it all the time.
totally. Going back to what you were saying about, how if you are constantly in your fight or flight, it's very, very difficult to, to sort of focus on anything else apart from whatever it is that's worrying you, which is why it's so important to bring our nervous systems back into balance and all of this stuff. And one thing that you and I talked about on here before is animals. And, I always think it's really, really useful actually to watch how animals behave, because when, my cat, like, he will get super scared, super stressed about whatever it is, he's in fight or flight, but literally as soon as whatever quote danger has passed, he comes back down to his parasympathetic nervous system. It's like animals, they show us how we should be behaving, which is, yeah, we get stressed for a bit, but then we come right back down, we calm ourselves down. Then something else stresses us out, then we calm right back down. But of course, us humans, we've lost the ability to do what animals do. And obviously, it's different. We have minds, we can think. But actually, take a leaf out of your pet's book, because they can teach us so much. And particularly that, like, it is amazing how, in any creature in the wild, like a deer in the headlights, yes, in that moment, it's going to be completely in its fight or flight, heart racing, all the rest of it. But as soon as that has passed, that danger has passed, that deer will go back to the calm state that it was in before. And that's what we need to train ourselves to be able to do. Like you say, through breathing or whatever it is, through meditation. And also, even if you don't do breathwork and you don't do meditation, it's, you can change this by simply becoming more aware of where your thoughts are at. I really believe that, but
Yeah.
ultimately it's just, if we don't have the awareness, then we cannot change this. If we're not aware of what we're thinking and where our focus is, we cannot change it. We just carry on, we'll just carry on sleepwalking through life and not being, wondering why we can't feel better. It's got to start with that awareness,
Yeah.
as always.
We would have been able to, we've all been able to do this, because even babies and toddlers, they do this all the time. Something happens and they let you know, they cry, they have whatever, they have a tantrum, and then very quickly they kind of regulate themselves back again. Once it's passed, once they've had, they've cried and their need has been met or the thing has passed, then generally they come back to their state again. You can sort of see it so well. And that's what we are all working towards now. But we've lost that ability because of stuff, and because our feelings we've learned how to squash our feelings down and all of that sort of thing. So yes, it's I think it's just I'm just trying to think of other little tools and tricks of what you can do. I think it really literally is, though, training your awareness, working on your nervous system to make sure that you're able to have that flexibility, and just be really mindful of where your energy is, where your attention's going, and where your energy is, and not not dwelling on things that can really get you down, because things do get you down. It's going to happen.
A really good example, actually, that I think is worth people thinking about is, the news is always a good example of this. So, of course, there's loads of shit going on in the world. There is no denying that. There's also lots of beautiful, amazing stuff going on in the world in equal measure. But what we tend to do is focus, because, of course, the media feeds our fears, loves feeding our fear. So we all end up. But the news is a really good example of dwelling on things that are not making you feel good. So, start to pay attention to, like, say there's a really scary news story or whatever it may be. Of course, we need to know what's going on in the world. Of course, we're going to, when we see horrendous things happening in the world, of course, it's going to make us feel bad. We're human, and it would be weird if it didn't. However, we are not actually gaining anything, and we're also not helping anyone or anything by walking around the world going on and on and on about, oh, this is happening, and oh, this is what I find so fascinating to watch in people. And we all know those kinds of people who, whenever you speak to them, they are moaning about the latest thing in the news, or the cost of this has increased, and the economy is fucked, and like somebody who is that's exactly what we don't want to be doing. And again, of course, you can be aware of what is going on in the world, and of course things affect us and all the rest of it, but are you one of those people who at every given opportunity you're rehashing the same old stories, the same old problems? And also another thing to sort of look out for in other people, which then kind of is like a mirror on yourself, because when you start to notice other people doing these things, it starts making you take a look at yourself and going, oh shit, I totally do that as well. So for example, is there somebody you know who is still dwelling on something that happened to them 17 and a half years ago? Are they still talking about it today? Are they still blaming that for the reason they're XYZ? I mean, my audience is single women, and I talk about the fact that, being single isn't the problem. But if you continue to tell the same story that, well, my life is shit, if I was single, then this, or, if I was in a relationship, then this, and because I'm single, this is crap, and this is crap, observe that in other people. Observe how other people dwell on certain stories or certain things that they identify with, and then see if you're, there's a similar pattern in yourself. And again, I used to do this, and I still can, but I used to do it a lot worse because I was a lot less conscious. So yeah, I think the news is a good one to start with, because that's a really good example of the kind of thing that we can dwell on is not making us feel good. And the question is, how long are you allowing yourself to sit? How long are you sitting in those feelings of anxiety or worry or whatever it is? Doesn't mean you can't watch the news, and it doesn't mean you can't be affected by what's going on in the world. But it does mean, are you allowing that to impact and affect your entire life? Are you listening to the news first thing in the morning, and are you then reading the paper during the day? And so are you kind of carrying this really negative news story around in your head all day, and it's making you feel bad? That's the kind of thing that we just want to be more aware of,
Yeah, and you're making me think also on whether on when people may have a long-standing feud with somebody else, or a long-standing disagreement with somebody else, and yes, there's probably very good reason why you've fallen out, or
let it go.
Someone's done something for you, but it isn't. It's by no mistake really that one of the key things is forgiveness in terms of helping people move on from things like addiction, for example, because unless you can forgive, you just can't. It's virtually impossible to move on. I've never been in that situation where I've had a grudge against somebody, but I do know people who have, like with family members or whatever, and it. And I understand it's very difficult if you've fallen out with someone who you love, who you genuinely love, but actually it's not serving you in any way to keep holding on to it. And it takes a lot. I'm sure it takes a lot to be able to go, do you know what? I'm just going to let this go, and I'm going to move on with my life, because I've seen it really eat up people. It just gets you stuck. You get stuck in a moment in time where it's affecting you. It's affecting your life, and actually, this is your life. So yeah, it's I think that's something also just to bear in mind as well.
That's such a good example.
I've got someone at the door.
All right, love.
Okay. I think that's really good for us.
We'll be back next week.
Finish off. All right. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Bye,
Okay.
Bye.
Ruminations in their tracks before we spend too much time getting lost in them, and then getting letting the anxiety build. So there's so many benefits, but I think very simply, to start off with, go and have a hunt. If you don't know, go and have a hunt and find a meditation that is good for you. Start with your breath. Lucy has her cock-a-doodle-doo club. I do the inner space. I do some, which is more breath focused, but I personally find doing breath work before meditation, I find it very difficult to drop straight into a meditation without the breath work, because I find it takes a lot longer. What the breath work does is that because if you're someone who is quite, he's got a very busy mind, and his nervous system is quite aroused already, what the breath work does, it gives you something to focus on, to do. So meditation is really asking you to be, whereas the breath work is giving you something to do, but actually the doing of the breath work is also a really fantastic signal. It's like a remote control to your nervous system. It's a signal to your nervous system saying, okay, you can chill out now, you can calm, I'm going to switch you into that really relaxed, chilled out state. And then you can access the meditation part of it so much more easily. And you can start then to really, and it brings you, the breath work also is a great way to have something to focus on. And then after that, so I like to focus on the breath to start with, and then it's when I like to go and focus perhaps on this space in my forehead or out here somewhere, and you get those feelings of bliss. So that I would really recommend as well for people who find it difficult to do the breath first.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And in Cock-a-doodle-doo, we always start with breath work and then move into a meditation, because like you, I find it easier to start, and in fact, even if I just start, sometimes what I'll do is I'll literally do like 2 or 3 minutes of just deep breaths. Quite often I'll do 4 in, 8 out, so I'll extend the exhale, and sometimes that's all it takes, is just doing some deep breaths at the beginning for a few minutes, just really intentional breathing, and then then just sort of going into a meditation. But yeah, I mean, both of us feel, I couldn't agree more that I find it easier to start with a little bit of breathing and then kind of drop into the meditation. It makes it easier for sure. Oh my God, it's 9:33.
Right. Amazing. Cool. All right. Well, hopefully that was helpful for anyone who is, considering starting a practice.
Yeah.
Well,
it's been a joy.
Yes.
We'll be back next week.
You will. Yes. Absolutely.
All right, see you later.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Bye.